8 cheetahs, sedated, crated, and loaded onto a modified passenger jet, flown 5,000 miles across the Indian Ocean on a September morning in 2022, the first of their kind to be moved from one continent to another to rebuild a species in a country that had lost it entirely. Because that is the staggering fact underneath this whole story. India had no cheetahs. Not a few, not a struggling remnant. None. The last 3 were reportedly shot by a single ruler in 1947, and by 1952, the government formally declared the Asiatic cheetah extinct on Indian soil, the only large mammal the country is known to have lost in modern times. So this was not a top-up of a fading population. It was a resurrection attempt, an effort to summon back an animal that had been gone for 70 years, using cousins imported from Africa, because India's own subspecies had dwindled to a few dozen survivors clinging on in the deserts of Iran, too rare to touch. The people who ran the operation were hoping, honestly, for something modest, survival, that these 8 cats would not simply die in a strange land with strange prey, strange heat, strange diseases. What happened next did shock the scientists, but not in the clean, triumphant way the headlines wanted. It was stranger, harder, and more honest than that. This is the real story of what happens when a nation tries to raise the dead. I'm Edmund Hale. Let's get into it. To understand the stakes, you have to understand what a cheetah actually is, because it is the most fragile of the great cats. It is not built like a leopard or a lion. It is built like a machine with one function: speed, a body stripped down to a spine, and a set of lungs and legs that can carry it from standstill to 70 miles an hour in 3 seconds. And everything about that specialization makes it delicate. It has low genetic diversity as a species, the legacy of an ancient near extinction that left every cheetah alive today unusually similar to every other. It stresses easily. It loses its kills to bigger predators. It needs open ground, and a lot of it. Take an animal that finely tuned and move it between continents, and you are asking a great deal. Picture what that body is doing at full stretch. The spine flexes like a drawn bow and snaps straight, throwing the hind legs past the front, so that for long fractions of a second the cheetah is airborne, touching nothing, a spotted blur pouring across the ground. Its claws are semi-retractable, gripping like a sprinter's spikes. Its tail swings as a rudder, and it can only hold that for a few hundred meters before its body overheats, and it has to stop, chest heaving, too spent even to defend the kill it just made. That is the paradox of the cheetah. The fastest land animal on Earth is also one of the most easily beaten, robbed of its meals by lions and hyenas, its cubs picked off by anything larger. It survives on the open plain by a razor-thin margin, and it does not adapt quickly, because a body built this precisely has very little give in it. India's grasslands had been waiting, in a sense. When the cheetah vanished, so did a certain kind of pressure on the landscape. These open scrub and savanna ecosystems, the ones ecologists call open natural ecosystems, are among the most overlooked and abused habitats in the country, dismissed as wasteland, handed over to development, missing the top predator that once shaped them. The argument for bringing the cheetah back was that it could become a flagship, a charismatic animal whose protection would drag an entire neglected ecosystem back into the light along with it. Restore the hunter, and you create a reason to restore the grassland. That was the vision. And there was history under it too, because the cheetah is woven deep into this land's past. Its very name traces back to a Sanskrit word meaning the spotted one. There are ancient cave paintings in central India showing a slender spotted cat being hunted. For centuries, Indian royalty kept coursing cheetahs for the chase. This was never a foreign animal in India. It was a native one, erased, and the plan was to stitch it back into a place that still, in its language and its stone, remembered it. And the site chosen was Kuno National Park in Madhya Pradesh, a place with the right rainfall, the right temperature range, and a decent base of prey. So on the 17th of September 2022, the first 8 arrived from Namibia, 5 females and 3 males, released into quarantine enclosures amid enormous national fanfare. A few months later, 12 more came from South Africa, 20 cats in total. And then the waiting began. And with a founding group that small and that specialized, everyone knew the population could unravel fast. It did something no one wanted first. It started dying. By early 2023, the deaths began, and they kept coming. A female with a pre-existing condition. A male, suddenly and unexplained. A female killed in a violent mating encounter. Then, as the monsoon humidity settled over Kuno, something almost nobody had predicted. The thick winter coats some of the cats had grown, triggered by African seasonal cues that no longer matched their new hemisphere, trapped moisture against their skin. Sores opened, flies laid eggs in the wounds, infections set in beneath the radio collars meant to keep them safe, and cheetahs died from the very devices monitoring them. Within roughly a year, 10 of the animals were dead, adults and cubs together, and the obituaries came fast and brutal. Critics called it a vanity project, a public relations exercise, playing God with a fragile animal for the sake of national pride. And they were not entirely wrong to worry. Now, here is the catch, and it is the part I want to be honest with you about, because this story does not resolve into a tidy miracle. The criticism was serious, and much of it was fair. Independent scientists had warned before the first crate ever landed that Kuno might be too small, the prey base uncertain, the risk of conflict with leopards and people real, and that establishing a truly self-sustaining wild population could take 30 or 40 years and require importing cheetahs from Africa every single year to keep it going. Those warnings did not evaporate, but watch what happened after that first devastating year, because this is where it gets genuinely interesting. The team adapted. They pulled the free-ranging cats back into large enclosures when the death spiked. They changed how they monitored, rethought the collars, learned the hard lessons the first year taught in blood, and the animals themselves did something the spreadsheets could not have promised. They bred. The first litter born on Indian soil arrived in 2023, the first cheetah cubs born in the country in over 70 years. And though most of that first litter did not survive, more followed. And here is the number that turned the story. In 2023, cub survival sat at around 25%. In 2024, across multiple litters, it climbed to roughly 76%. By late 2025, the first cub ever born in India had grown up and given birth to cubs of her own, a second generation, the clearest possible sign that these animals were not just surviving, but establishing. The population that started at 20 imported cats had become a mix of founders and India-born young, most of the newcomers now born to this land rather than shipped to it. That does not erase the deaths, and it does not silence the critics, and it does not prove the grand vision will hold across the decades it needs. But an animal declared extinct in a country in 1952 is now raising its second generation of young there, and that is not nothing. So step back and look at the whole shape of it. 8 cats on a jet, flown across an ocean to a place their species had not touched in 70 years, watched by people who mostly just hoped they would not die. Many did, and out of that painful, contested, imperfect beginning, cubs were born, and then cubs of cubs, and a grassland, long dismissed as wasteland, found itself, for the first time in living memory, with a reason to be protected. That is the part I keep coming back to. We tend to imagine that bringing something back is a clean act of triumph, a ribbon cut and a species restored. The reality is messier and more humbling. It is failure and adaptation and grief and stubbornness, all tangled together, and a genuine open question still hanging over the whole thing. Because the honest truth is, we do not yet know if this works. The cheetahs are breeding, but they are not yet a free, self-sustaining wild population, and they may not be for decades, if ever. So here is what I want to leave you with. Is this a resurrection, the brave and difficult rebirth of a lost species? Or is it a beautiful, expensive gamble we are still waiting to see the end of? I genuinely want to know what you think, so tell me down in the comments. If this changed how you see these animals, share it with someone who needs to see it too. And subscribe, because the natural world is full of stories exactly this strange, and I've got plenty more to tell you. I'm Edmund Hale. Thanks for watching.